Hi, this is Gustavo Oliveira, and this course is about an advanced harmony concept that I call Intervallic Voicings Theory. It is aimed to students of music that are familiar with improvisation, modes, and basic harmony. Its direct application will be on chord substitution and embellishment and chord soloing. For example, I will demonstrate by embellishing a simple chord progression that goes from an A minor 7 to a D minor 7. I'm going to use a groove to help me out. So here's A minor 7, D minor 7, A minor 7, D minor 7. Now I'm going to embellish. Now let's take a step further. Now I'm going to play one different chord per beat, more in the realm of chord soloing. Let's see how it sounds. Again, A minor 7, go to D minor 7. And let's say, even if you want to go more traditional, let's say play ghost notes, you can still add a few extra chords to embellish the groove. Let's try that. As you can see, in all cases, I was able to play several chords, and you can still hear the underlying harmony going on, which was a simple A minor 7 to a D minor 7 in this case. By understanding how intervallic voicings work, you will eventually have total freedom to play any kind of chord you want on top of any chord progression you want. And that's the goal of this course. The Intervallic Voicings Theory is not covered by any music school in the world because I actually created this concept. Therefore, there is only one place you can learn this theory from, and that is throughout these series of videos. So, if you find these ideas taught in any other place in the world, perhaps with different names, it will be merely a coincidence. Nonetheless, I did not create it from the scratch. I shall emphasize that. Indeed, I developed these ideas many years ago when I was deeply studying quartal voicings, which is a subject that is covered by good music schools. So you can think of intervallic voicings as the next step after quartals. It's a more generic theory, and quartals are part of it. And the way I will present this theory is by breaking the course into 4 parts. First, a revision about modes. Second, we'll dive into quartal voicings. Third, I will discuss the IVT, which stands for the Intervallic Voicing Tool. It's a web-based application that you can use from my website to help you quickly create and visualize intervallic voicings that you will create in the future. And you'll save a lot of time, as you see. And in this course also, I'll be using a guitar because it's my main instrument. But everything you learn from here can be translated to any harmonic instrument such as piano or keyboard. And finally, by the end of this series of videos, I hope you will not only be able to expand your chord vocabulary dramatically, but also start to look at chords in a completely different manner. You look at chords as intervallic voicings. All right, let's now see how these ideas work. Now let's do a quick revision about modes. I'm assuming you are familiar with most of the material I will discuss right now. However, I decided to include this revision because different nomenclatures are used by different musicians. And also, I do feel there are a lot of misunderstanding about what modes are and how they should be used. And finally, it is almost impossible to talk about quartal voicings and intervallic voicings later on without a deep understanding of modes. Therefore, you can use this part not only as a revision, but as a reference throughout the course. So feel free to come back and revisit this material if something gets a little bit confused for you later on. As I go on with this revision, it may sound like I'm talking about soloing because I'll be playing scales on top of chords. But in essence, what I'm doing is actually analyzing what kind of notes fit or misfit with over a certain type of chord or chord progression. And this is crucial for intervallic voicings. Now let's look at the basic definition of modes. In other words, what are modes? The simplest definition of a mode is the chord scale. What I mean by that, any chord you create, you can also associate one or more musical scales to it. And these scales are also called the possible modes for this chord. For example, if you play an E minor, you could associate to this chord several different modes. And I use 3 as an example for now. One possibility would be the E Phrygian mode, which is made of root, flat 2, flat 3, 11, 5th, flat 6, and flat 7. Now, if you play this mode over a groove in E minor, it will sound like this. Giving it more or less a flamenco taste to it. Another possibility would be the E Dorian mode, which is made of root, 9, flat 3, 11, 5th, 6th or 13th, and flat 7. Now let's try a groove in E minor to see how this mode sounds. It has perhaps a more jazzy sound to it. Finally, let's try the E Aeolian mode on top of E minor. The Aeolian mode is made of root, 9, flat 3, 11, 5, flat 6, and flat 7. Let's try on top of the groove. This sounds more like a playing a minor scale. In a little bit, I will go over the 7 main modes generated from the major scalar more truly. However, there are important aspects about modes that I wanted to clarify in the next sections. An important aspect regarding modes is the concept of modal music and tonal music. In short, modal music usually revolves around one chord, and tonal music usually revolves around one key. To understand the difference better, let's go back to the E minor and the E Phrygian mode. Depending on the context, even if you play E Phrygian mode on top of an E minor chord, it does not necessarily mean that you will get the Phrygian sound very clearly. And this is because if the song is not modal, in other words, its chord progression does not revolve around E minor as its center in this particular case, there isn't enough space to create the E Phrygian sound. For example, I'm going to play a tonal chord progression that goes from a C major 7 to an E minor 7. It goes C major 7, E minor 7, and then for the B section, F going to a G7, and C major 7, E minor 7, D minor 7, and G7. And I'm going to use the E Phrygian mode on top of this chord progression. Let's see what happens. Although the chord progression had lots of E minors and I was playing E Phrygian all the time, it did not sound very Phrygian. And again, this is because the chord progression was tonal and not modal. And in this particular case, it revolved around C major. Indeed, E Phrygian sounded like the plain old C major scale. Since they have the exact same notes, the context dictated the difference. Back again to E Phrygian, but this time let's play over a modal chord progression that goes from a E minor to an F minor. Let's see what happens. As you can confirm, the same scale is back sounding Phrygian purely because of the context, or in other words, because the groove was a modal groove and it revolved around E minor. So the conclusion is that regarding modes, the type of chord progression is crucial for the perception of the modal sound. It is not impossible to get the modal sound in a tonal context, since jazz players do it all the time, but it is certainly more difficult. Mainly because you have less time to play it, or practically speaking, there are less bars for each chord. Another important concept about modes is what we call unstable notes and tensions. Unstable notes are notes of a mode that don't work harmonically or melodically well with its chord. For example, if we play the Aeolian mode over an A minor 7 chord, at first glance, all the notes seem to sound fine over it. However, if you look at the F note, for example, more carefully, you will realize that this note can sound very unstable or outside, as we call to, over an A minor chord. So let's clarify by playing it over A minor 7 under a harmonic in a melodic context. So here's the A minor 7, here's the F note. One more time. So you can see how harsh it sounds. Now let's try with the groove, and I will play some licks that emphasize the F note. As you can confirm, in either case, it seems like F sounds pretty outside over an A minor or A minor 7 chord. And why, you may ask? Well, this is explained by the concept of superior half step with the notes that compose a chord, also called the chord tones or arpeggios. In this particular example, F here created a superior half step with E. Here's E again. And in this case, E is the fifth of A minor. So the conclusion is that every time you play a note that is half step above any chord tone, this note will sound unstable or outside. Note also that not all modes have unstable notes. Some don't, like the Dorian mode, as we will analyze it later. Nonetheless, the unstable notes are critical for intervallic voicings because they sound outside by its very nature. So, in order to keep the harmonic context smooth, you most likely want to avoid emphasize them. Now let's talk about tensions. Tensions are notes from the mode that aren't the chord tones, but work well over the chord tones. You are free to use them as much as you like. It certainly changes the flavor of the chord, but does not cause instability or outside notes. For example, let's look at the ninth of the Aeolian mode, which is the note B. And let's try in a harmonic context and a melodic context. So I'll play A minor 7th with the ninth, with B, and then I'll play a groove in A minor, and I'll play a few licks, emphasize the note B. Here we go, A minor 7, B note. Again. One more time. So it sounds pretty nice. Now let's try it with the groove. With all this information, we conclude the following things. Modes are the chord scales, as you know, and they are composed by the chord tones or arpeggios, tensions, and also may have unstable notes. As a side note, Some modes, they don't have unstable notes, like the Dorian mode, and we'll see that later. Tensions embellish the chord tones, giving you more harmonic or melodic possibilities. Unstable notes, on the other hand, they create superior half steps with the chord tones, leading to an out sound that may be undesirable. There are also exceptions about that, meaning regarding superior half steps and chord tones, and we will see this as well in later sections. So what all of this has to do with intervallic voicings, you may wonder? Well, in case you haven't noticed, modes tell you what notes fit or misfit over a certain type of chord, as I have mentioned a while ago. Therefore, next time you see, for example, an A minor chord, and you decide to use the notes from the Aeolian mode to embellish this chord, you can now play A minor, A minor 7, A minor 9, 7, 9, A minor 11, A minor 7, 9, 11, if you have enough fingers, and so on. And this is the beginning to understand intervallic voicings. Let's now put all that in practice with the groove, and I will play different tensions from A Aeolian over A minor, embellishing the chord. There are 21 modes that are vastly used in harmony improvisation. They are not all of them, but indeed the most common ones. 7 of them derive from the major scale. Another 7 from the melodic minor. And finally 7 more from the harmonic minor. For historical reasons, most of them are called by Greek names, as you have seen it before. So in the next sections, I will analyze meticulously the 7 modes that are derived from the major scale, using C as the root of each mode. Yet the same principles can be applied to any mode, and I encourage you to research about the modes derived from the harmonic and melodic minor scales as an exercise. Nonetheless, when you get to the IVT tool, you see that all the information is already programmed in it. Finally, just as a nomenclature, in the following sections, when you hear me saying a 3 or 7, I mean major third, major 7. Likewise, if I say flat 3, flat 7 means minor third, minor 7. And the same apply to other intervals like flat 5, sharp 4, flat 13, etc., etc. Sometimes I get things exchanged, but it all means the same intervals. The first mode, it's called Ionian. Its intervallic formula is root 9, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Its chord tones are root, major third, fifth, and major 7, and can be used over any major chord or major 7 chord. Its tensions are the 9th and the 6th, generating these types of chords. This is major 9, major 6. Then stable notes the 4th because it creates a superior half step with the major 3rd, and it is denoted with a star on this video and on the IVT tool. Anyway, let's try it with the groove in C major. First, I'll play some chords to show the possibilities for harmonization, and then I'll improvise a little bit just with the scale. Major 7 chord, major 9, major 6, The second mode is called the Dorian. Its intervallic formula is root, 9, flat 3, 11, 5, 6 or 13, and flat 7. Its chord tones are root, minor 3rd, 5th, and minor 7th, and can be used over any minor chord or minor 7 chord. Its tensions are 9, 6, and 11th, generating these types of chord. Minor 9, minor 11th, minor 6. Oh, it's major. Is a minor chord is the major 6. There are not really any unstable notes with the Dorian mode because none of the notes create superior half steps with its chord tones. So let's try over a groove in C minor, and the same deal. I'll play the chord possibilities and then I will improvise a little bit. Minor 9, minor 11, minor 6, The third mode is called Phrygian. Its intervallic form is root, flat 2, flat 3, 11, 5th, flat 6, and flat 7. Its chord tones are root, flat 3, 5th, and flat 7. This mode can be used over a minor chord or minor 7th chord. Its tensions, the only tension is the 11th, generating this chord, the minor 11. So it has two unstable notes, the flat 2 that calls the superior half step with the root, and the flat 6 which calls the superior half step with the 5th. So let's try with the groove, playing the chords and then improvising. Minor 7, minor 11, fourth mode is called the Lydian mode. Its intervallic formula is root 9, 3, sharp 11, 5, 6, and 7. The chord tones for this mode are the root, major third, fifth, and major 7. This mode can be used over any major or major 7th chord. Its tensions are the 9, sharp 11, 6, and they generate these types of chords. Major with 9, with 6, and with sharp 11. It's one of my favorite chords actually. Similar to the Dorian, it has no unstable or outside notes, since none of its tensions create superior half steps with any of its chord tones. Alright, let's try with the groove, see the chords and some melodic sound. Major 9, major 6, sharp 11. Fifth mode is called the Mixolydian. Its intervallic formula is root 9, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 13th, and flat 7. Its chord tones are root, major third, fifth, and flat 7. This mode can be used over any major or dominant chord. Its tensions are the 9 and the 13 and generate these type of chords. So 7, 9, 7 with 13th, dominant 7 I mean. The only unstable note is the 4th because it created a superior half step with the 3rd. However, the Mixolydian can be altered like no other mode, giving you almost all possibilities for tensions except the 4th. I will not discuss them all because you can take an entire course just for that. But in short, the reason for so many alterations is because inside the dominant chord we have the what we call the triton, is this sharp 4 interval. Since, if you can hear, it's already a tense sound, it allows 7 alterations of the 9th, the 4th, and the 6th. You can have a dominant flat 9, dominant with flat 13th, sharp 9, flat 4, etc., etc. And none of them sound outside really. They actually sound pretty nice depending on the context too. So a while back I said that any note that creates a superior half step with the chord tone will sound outside. Well, the best example where this rule does not apply is with the Mixolydian and its alterations. Many of them are half step above any of its chord tones. All right, let's try with the groove. Dominant, 13th, dominant to the 9th, dominant again. The sixth mode is called Aeolian. Its intervallic formula is root 9, flat 3, 11, 5, flat 6, and flat 7. Its chord tones are root, flat 3, 5, and flat 7. and can be used over any minor or minor 7th chord. Extensions are the 9th and the 11th, generating the minor 9 and the minor 11th chord. Its unstable note is the flat 6 because it creates a superior half step with the 5th. All right, let's try with the groove. Minor 7, minor 11th, minor 7, minor 9. Finally, the 7th mode generated from the C major scale is the Lockean mode. Its intervallic formula is root, flat 2, flat 3, 11, flat 5, flat 13th, and flat 7. Its chord tones are root, flat 3, flat 5, and flat 7. It can be used over a minor 7 flat 5 chord, also called half diminished. Its extensions are the 11th and the flat 13th. And these are the chords that it generates. As unstable note, we have the flat 2 because it creates a superior half step with the root of the mode. Let's try with the groove. Minor 7 flat 5, 11th, flat 13th. Now that we revised the main modes derived from the major scale, you may ask, so do I need to memorize all these intervallic formulas, tensions, and unstable notes? Well, it is certainly good to know, but for the purpose of this course, it really isn't a requirement. This is because when I show you the intervallic voicing tool, all the information is already programmed in it, as I have mentioned before. Plus, there are many ways to memorize these scales with minimum effort. A common way musicians use is to really think about the 7 modes I spoke about it as simply the major scale but starting from a different note. And the same applies for the modes that derive from the melodic and harmonic minor scales. So let's see how that works. Let's use the C major scale. So then you have the C Ionian, which is the C major scale starting on the C note. Then D Dorian, C major scale starting on the D note. Then E Phrygian, C major scale starting on E note. Then F Lydian, C major scale starting on the F note. G Mixolydian, C major scale starting on G note. Aeolian, C major scale starting on the A note. finally B Lockean, C major scale starting on B note. So in practical terms, all you need to know for the main modes are three scales: the major, the melodic minor, and the harmonic minor. However, I want to stress that modes are not simply these scales starting from a different note. As far as notes go, this statement is correct indeed. However, modes require the context of modal music, as I showed you before. Otherwise, like in that previous example, if you get a tonal progression, C major, you can play C Ionian, D Dorian, E Phrygian, F Lydian, and so on. And they will all sound like a C major scale and not the modes from it. So that concludes our revision about modes, and I hope I have clarified to you the main concepts. In this section, you will learn about quartal chords. There are three main types of chord sounds in Western music: major, minor, and what we call hybrid. Major chords, they sound happy between quotes, like this. Minor chords, conversely, they sound sad between quotes. So let's try that. And finally, the hybrid chords, which are the quartal chords, when you hear them, you cannot really classify in either happy or sound. Their mood is unclear. That's why they're called hybrid. So it sounds like this. Or. So now I'll try with the groove, then you can see the three types under the context of a band playing. A groove with major chords. Now a groove with minor chords. Now a groove with quartal chords, the hybrid sound. Now let's explain where these major, minor, and hybrid chords come from. I'll use the software screen this time because it's easy to visualize this way. We can subdivide the major and minor chords in two main categories: triads, which are three-note chords. Here all these chords have three notes. And tetrads, which are four-note chords. Here all of them have four notes. And pretty much most tunes in Western music use four types of triads, which are major, minor, diminished, and augmented, which is not displayed in here. And five types of tetrads, which are major 7, minor 7, dominant 7, and minor 7 flat 5, and diminished, which is not shown here as well. Then adding the tensions to these chords like we did before that we borrow from the modes, we can get most chords we use. And of course, we also have the so-called power chords, which is really about harmonic intervals, which are 2-note chords, so we're not discussing here. Now, by looking at the chart, again, 2 important things we can observe. First, these chords come from stacking the major scale on top of itself 3 times for the triads and 4 times for the tetrads. If you look at here, you see C, D, E, F, G, A, and B, and then again it's the same scale but starting from E, E, F, G, A, B, C, and D, and etc. And the same thing for the tetrads. Also, you will realize that if you look at more carefully, these chords intervallic formula are pretty much a bunch of thirds stacked together, and that's not coincidence because that's how musicians build this chord. So what I mean by that, if you look at the interval between C and E, so here you have a major third, E and G you have a minor third, and if you keep going, D and F you have a minor third, F and A a major third, and so on. So in all cases, all these notes are separated by intervals of thirds or minor thirds. And even the augmented and diminished chords that are not listed here are again just minor thirds or major thirds stacked together. So how about quartals? Well, let me even move a little bit the mouse so we can see it better. It's the same really idea for quartals, but instead of stacking thirds, you stack notes into fourths, intervals of fourths, and that's where quartals come from, and they give you the hybrid sound. So if you look at it again, so here's the C major scale, C, and then you go to an F, again C major scale start from F, and this is an interval of fourth, and then the next one will be a B, another fourth interval, and the next one is an E, another interval of fourth. So they are pretty much a bunch of fourths stacked together, and that's how they come from, where they come from. And of course you can extend this idea to fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, etc. However, it doesn't work that well, mostly because these high intervals are simply inversions of the low intervals. In other words, a fourth and a fifth is a fourth inverted, and vice versa. So if you try to stack a bunch of fifths, you're going to get a very similar sound, the quartal sound. Likewise, triads, the thirds and the sixths, so the same deal. Anyway, so let's now see how they sound. Here's the triads. And now let me try the tetrads. And let me move the mouse here. And finally the quartals, so you will resemble quite a bit the groove we played before. Now let's understand how we can use these quartal chords. But to understand how to use them, it is not a straightforward answer. And this is because most of the music we play is still based on triads and tetrads. So if we simply replace the harmony based on thirds by fourths, meaning the triads and the tetrads by quartals, it may work, but also it can change the chord progression dramatically. So to clarify the problem, let's try a simple example, and I will play a chord progression based on triads, and then I switch to tetrads, and finally quartals. The roots are going to be C, A, D, and G. Let's see what happens. First triads. may have observed that when I switched from triads to tetrads, there wasn't much of a difference. However, when I used the quartal chords, especially from G to C, the change was much more dramatic. So compare the difference again. Triads, tetrads, and then quartals. Also, if we had a melody going on, it probably would not work at all. Therefore, by simply substituting chords from triads to tetrads to quartals, you cannot really transform a standard chord progression that way. A progression with quartal usually will have some drastic changes. So how do we go about this problem if we cannot just simply substituting thirds by fourths? Well, we need extra concepts to get there. But first is the concept of the most important note of a chord, for lack of better terms, or the most important notes of a chord. Second, the concept of voicings. And third, the concept of visualization of a chord by its intervallic structure. So in the next sections, I will go over each one in detail. Start with the concept of the most important notes of a chord. If we look again at the chord progression, C major to an E minor to a D minor to the G7. And now if we just play the third and the seventh of each chord like this, instead of, you can still feel the chord progression going on. So what this tells us is that the most important notes of a chord are really the third and the seventh, being the third the most important one. So literally, if we drop the root and the fifth, or both, you can still walk to the harmony and the listener will still feel the chord progression. Especially in a band situation, since you're likely to have a bass player playing roots or fifths or both. So these notes really become irrelevant. So this harmonic property will be crucial for quartal and intervallic voices later on, as you will confirm. Let's try with another example, but this time with a common chord progression. Let's do with the 12-bar blues. That way we can test with something more cliche. So I will play the tetrads, then I will drop all the notes and I will play just the third and the seventh. Let's see what happens. Tetrads. Now the concept of voicings. So what are exactly voicings? Its basic definition can be stated as voicings are any harmonic combination of notes. Put in another way, any arrangement of notes played simultaneously. So I use this term interchangeable with chords, but voicings are much more generic. You can think as voicings as the big scope. So inside voicings, there are traditional chords, intervallic, harmonic intervals, inversions, etc. So when you play different patterns of a chord, really what you're playing are different voicings of this chord. For example, few voicings of C major 7 would be one here, another one, another one more, another one, another one, another one more. They are all C major 7, but different note arrangements, different octaves, etc. But don't confuse voicings with inversions. That's a common mistake. Inversions are chords being the root, being the lowest note, being the third, the fifth, or the seventh. For example, like a C major 7 based on E, the inversion on the third, inversion on the fifth in G, inversion inversion of the seventh. This is different of what I just showed you because all these chords, all these voicings, the root is still in C. So inversions are voicings for sure, but voicings can be inversions, can be chords with tensions, harmonic intervals, or any arrangements of notes played simultaneously. Again, let's say chords with tensions, here's one voicing, another voicing, harmonic interval is another voicing, an inversion. So that's the basic idea behind voicings. Now the concept of visualization of voicings by its intervallic structure. To understand it better, let's look at the C major 7-9. In standard harmony, you create this chord by analyzing its notes from the chord notation. In other words, you think in terms of C major 7, adding the major 9th, which is the D note in this case. And in this case also I drop the 5th. However, a different possibility would be, or this. And because there is no information about the precise intervallic structure in standard chord notation, you can come up with several different voices for the same chord, like I did with the C major 7 chord. But now let's think differently. For instance, this exact voicing can be looked as a major third, a fifth, and a minor third. Likewise, this one, it's a major 9th, major 2nd, and a minor 3rd. Or this one, it's major 3rd, minor 3rd, and a 5th. All translate into a C major 7-9 in standard harmony. However, for quartals and intervallic voicings, they are different. They are the different shades of the same color, basically. This type of analysis, thinking of course about as an intervallic structure, seems extra work, but its precise nature will help you to break from the paradigm of complex chord notations. Eventually, you look at everything as intervallic structures and the best way to combine them. And certain intervallic structures will sound better than others. So you may like this better than this, or this, or this. And since they all have the same notes, the only way to differentiate between them is to understand their intervallic structure. And more importantly, certain intervallic structures create certain patterns of sound that we will explore this. Before we put all the pieces together, a few more steps they need to be discussed. And one is, how many quartal voices can I build and what are they? Because of the nature of the guitar, I can't really play that many notes simultaneously. Therefore, I can only do 6 notes maximum. But for the purpose of this lesson, I will only use 4 notes, making it easier to play it on the guitar. However, if you're on piano or keyboard, of course, you're not limited to 4 notes only. So with this in mind, let's figure out how many 4-note quartal voices I can create with the base quartal structure. 4, 4, 4, meaning 3 intervals of 4 stacked together. This leads to this quartal voice that I just played. However, 4th and 5th are inversions of each other. Therefore, we can stack not only intervals of 4th, but 5ths too. And now our possibilities will increase. So in our 4-note constraint, we can create a 4th and a 5th per tree string. So here's a 4th, a 5th, 4th and a 5th, 4th and a 5th. So therefore, if you do the math, you have 8 possibilities, because it's 2 times 2 times 2. And there will be all possibilities for quartal voices with the 4-note constraint. So let's look at one by one slowly. So the first one will be the one that I just showed you, 4, 4, 4. Second one will be 4, 4, 5. Third one, 4, 5, 4. Fourth one, 4, 5, 5. now we have 5, 4, 4. And this is like the sus4, the famous sus4 chord. But notice that I'm looking at this as intervallic structure, the stuff I discussed in the previous section. So it really doesn't matter for me, these nomenclatures. I'm not looking at this as a sus4 chord. I'm looking at the intervallic, the quartal voicing or intervallic voicing. 5, 4, 4. Anyway, so the 6 would be 5, 4, 5. The 7th possibility will be 5, 5, 4. And finally, 5, 5, 5. 5, 5, 5. And I start playing these voicings here in the higher frets because it would be really difficult to play on the lower frets. And these are all the 4-note quartal voice we can build on the guitar. In this section, we look at the usage of these quartal voicings. So the easiest way to demonstrate how it's done is by showing you with an example, so chord embellishment in this case. So what I'm going to do is to add some quartal voice to a simple chord progression. It'll be again a little groove that goes from A minor 7 to D minor 7. And also I will use the intervallic voicing tool to help me, so which it is the wave-based software tool that maps voices into modes automatically for you that I talked about in the beginning of the course. So I'll start to explain the IVT now, but there will be another video just dedicated to it. So if you don't follow well, don't worry, because there will be a second video about it, and plus when I get to intervallic voices there will be more examples. Anyway, so back to our groove from A minor to D minor. So we need to answer a few questions. First, what quartal voicings you want to use to embellish this chord progression? I mean, from the 8 possibilities I showed you in the previous section, which one do you want to use? Second, what modes do you want to use over these chords? So do you want the A minor to be Aeolian, Dorian, or Phrygian? So, and finally, this is more of an artistic question. So how inside or outside you want to be? So in this case, do you want these voices to show up drastically or smoothly over the chord progression? So I'll keep everything inside for this example. But anyway, let's tackle the answers one at a time. No rush yet. So say you want to use the sound of the voicing 4-4-4 in the 4-5-4. And you want to use A minor, the Aeolian mode, and D minor to sound Dorian. So the basic idea is to visualize Aeolian and D Dorian all across the neck, and then you scan for these quartal voice, the 4-4-4 or the 4-5-4 inside the mode. By searching for these patterns, you may find in different places, or you may not find at all. So however, also bear in mind that you can alter the intervallic structure of these voices within the mode, meaning you can make a 4th become a sharp 4, or 5 become a flat 5, so to fit inside the mode. So the IVT will do all that for you as you see it. So in this case, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the 4-5-4 to embellish A minor using Aeolian, and the 4-4-4 to embellish D minor using the D Dorian mode. And like I said, the IVT will help tremendously into this process. Let's use the IVT to analyze the voicings we picked and make our choices. Starting with the voice 4-5-4 over A minor using the Aeolian mode. The first thing is to input this data. So I will select the voicing 4-5-4 on this guitar grid here. And the convention is this is the 6th string, 5th string, 4th string, 3rd string, 2nd string, and 1st string. And that's 1st fret, 2nd fret, 3rd fret, and so on. And this is like open string. So if you click on a string in between 2 frets is the hot spot. So I'm going to select 4, 5, 4, starting from the 5th string. I could do from any string, but I'm going to do this for the final arrangement. So here's like, let me select first 4. So this is a 4th between those two notes. And now a 5th. So here's an interval of 5th between those two notes. And now another 4th. So interval of 4th between those two notes. So now I have 4, 5, 4. That's the voicing we choose. Now let me scroll down. Let's select the scale. So it will be a natural, it will be an Aeolian mode. And let me select the root. So it will be an A, natural. Anyway, so all this good to go. So we go back up here and we press the build button to take to the next screen. In this screen, the software created the mode with the root on A displayed as the white numbers. So R stands for the root, 9 for the 9th, flat 3 for minor 3rd, and so on. And notice that the star behind the note means that this is an unstable note. For instance, the flat 6 is unstable in the Aeolian because it creates a superior half step with the 5th. So basically the white notes in this fretboard here, it's showing the Aeolian mode all over the fretboard. This is the guitar, the same convention. This is the 5th string, a 6th string, 5th string, 4th string, and so on. And you can confirm because if you count like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, here the root is on the 5th fret of the 6th string, so that should be the note A, and it's precisely the note A. So also the software searched for the pattern 4-5-4, the voicing 4-5-4 inside the Aeolian mode, and it found in several places noted by the blue lines. So these are perfect matches, meaning it is the exact voicing 4-5-4 that we input in the previous screen. And if you look at all these blue lines here, they are the voicings, each of them, and they follow the exact pattern of a 4th, a 5th, and a 4th. The green lines, on the other hand, the software changed the pattern to fit inside the mode. Noted that here it's a sharp 4 and now it's a flat 5, same deal but harmonically matching the intervallic structure, and then again a sharp 4. So it's different from the blue line. So what the software did, it just tries to fit this inside the mode. So it changed the intervallic structure to adjust to the mode. Moving down below, the other thing that the computer does is to analyze all the voicings and report to you their strength. These two tables show the results. The left one right here reports the blue voicings, which are the perfect ones, and it's noted here by the word perfect. And the right table reports the green voicings, which are the ones that the software changed to fit within the mode, and noted here as harmonically fit. So the column voicing notes are the notes that this voicing is generating, and this is the most confusing part of the IVT because it's connected to the guitar fretboard above, and I will explain that to you in a bit. So the report's based on strength. So what that is like how outside or inside those voicings are. So the top voicings are the most inside, and the bottom ones are the most outside. You notice the word outside here, and these are the ones that are the most inside. And the criteria that this table is built is based on the most important notes of the chord. So do you remember the 3rd and the 7th? So the voicings that are the most inside are the ones that contain the 3rd and the 7th, and then goes to root and 5th inclusive, and then just one note of the chord, and then tensions or unstable notes and notes that are totally outside of the scale. Let's move to the most difficult part of the IVT, actually to interpret the tables and find the voicings over the fretboard. So by looking at the table again, what the software is telling me is that the best voicings are the one that says flat 7, flat 3, flat 7, and flat 3, because it's basically the 3rd and the 7th of A minor in this case. Then it comes the one that says
5 and root, 5 and root, because it's got both. And notice that this one is stronger than one below, the one that says 11th flat 7, 11th flat 7, because it's only got the 7th, the 11th is just a tension. The rest seems pretty outside, meaning just the root in this case, and the other ones are tensions or unstable notes. And even the harmonically fit one, it looks pretty bad because it's got a flat 6, which is an unstable note, and the 9th, which is just a tension. So let me go back in here. So by inspect the results, I'm going to test definitely this one, flat 7, flat 3, flat 7, flat 3, and 5 and root for chord embellishment. And I'll discard 11, flat 7, seems pretty weak, and all the other ones that says outside. Or put it another way, I'm picking the voicing that says 3 and 7 because it's got the 3rd and the 7th, the chord, which are the most important notes of this chord, and the one that says root and 5 because it contains root and the 5 inclusive. I will discuss a little exception about the outside, so I'm discarding the outside notes for now, but does not necessarily mean it will sound bad. Sometimes it may work, so I may discuss this later in the lesson. Let's connect the two tables in this section. So what we're going to do first is to find the voicing flat 7, flat 3, flat 7, flat 3 from this table here on the fretboard. So by looking at the blue voicings, we scan for the one that starts with the flat 7. So we keep going, and here it is, right here, right on the 10th fret. So I found it right there. So what that means, if the root is here, the A note, 5th string, 12th fret in this case, and we skip 2 frets below 1, 2, right there on the 10th fret, this is the flat 7. So if we play the voicing 4, 5, 4, starting from the 5th string, 2 frets below A, right on the 10th fret, we will get the voicing flat 7, flat 3, flat 7, flat 3, and that's how this voicing is connected to this part of the table. Likewise, let's find the 5 root, 5 root. The same exact process. So we go back and scan through the blue voice until we find the one that starts with the 5th. So we keep going. Here it is. So it is precisely 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frets below A, right on the note E. So if we play the voicing 4, 5, 4, starting on the note E of the 5th string, we'll get the voicing 5 root, 5 root. And that's again how this table is connected to the fretboard. So you basically scan and find the first note. Moving on to the second quartal voicing, the 4-4-4 over D minor, use the D Dorian mode. Okay, same deal. First, let's input the data. Let's put, and just to be consistent, I'm going to use the voicing start from the 5th string. So it could start from any string. So we have the 4-4-4. Let's pick here Dorian and the D note. Let's go back up, and I'm going to press the build button. So by looking at the tables, now this time we have several possibilities. So just to simplify, I'm going to use this first one here, which is like root, 4th, flat 7, flat 3, which is very strong. It's basically a D minor 7 by adding the 4th. So I'm going to pick this one. And also in this case, I'm going to use one of the harmonically fit ones. The first one again, because it's got the flat 7, flat 3, 6, and 9. And the reason it sounds appealing to me to add this to the arrangement is because it has the 6, which is the trademark of the Dorian mode. And of course, it contains the 3rd and the 7th. So these two voicings, they really, just by looking at the report, they sound very good fits. Anyway, so let's find them, the same process. So by looking at the fretboard, let's spot the first one. So here's the root. So it's right there, is the D note. So that's immediately you can spot. So it's root, 4, flat 7, and flat 3. So that's the connection between this voicing and this part of the table. And now the other one, which starts with the flat 7. So we just scanning so we can see it here. It's a green voicing because the computer adjusted to the mode. So here's the flat 7. So we have flat 7, flat 3, 6, and 9. So if we play this voicing, which has been adjusted 2 frets below the root, which is going to be right on the note C, we'll get the 4, in this case a sharp 4, and 4 voicing. So it's adjusted. But like I said, I want to try this one because the 6. And these are going to be the 2